A dying young woman with stage 2 brain cancer approaches a single father at a bus stop, begging him to take her newborn baby. What happens next transforms 4 broken lives into an unexpected family, proving that love doesn't always arrive the way we expect. Sometimes it shows up desperate, bald, and holding a 2-week-old baby in the freezing Chicago night. Before we continue, please tell us, where in the world are you tuning in from? We love seeing how far our stories travel. Excuse me, are you Elias? Elias Harrison froze mid-step, his hand still clutching his worn messenger bag. It was nearly 11 at night, and the Ashland Avenue bus stop was deserted except for him and the woman on the bench. He turned slowly. She was hunched forward, but what struck him immediately was her head, completely bald, pale scalp gleaming under the flickering streetlight. Dark circles carved deep shadows beneath her eyes. She couldn't have been more than 25. And she was holding something wrapped in blankets. "I'm sorry, do I know you?" Elias asked carefully, taking a small step back. This was Chicago's South Side at night. You learn to be cautious.
"No, but I know you." Her voice was hoarse, barely above a whisper. She stood unsteadily, and that's when he saw. It wasn't just blankets. It was a baby. A tiny face peeked out, eyes closed, impossibly small. "You volunteer at the Haven Community Shelter. Tuesdays, Thursdays, Saturdays. You've been doing it for 4 months." Elias's pulse quickened. "How do you—" "Please." She took a shaky step toward him, and he could see tears streaming down her gaunt cheeks. "Please, I need you to take her." The words hung in the cold air between them. "I think you're confused," Elias said slowly, his mind racing. Was she mentally ill? Dangerous? He glanced around, but the street was empty. "If you need help, the shelter has resources. I can call someone." "I'm not confused." The desperation in her voice made him freeze. "I know exactly who you are, Elias Harrison. You have a 7-year-old daughter named Ivy. You lost your wife 3 years ago. You work in IT but spend your evenings volunteering because Ivy's teacher mentioned the shelter needed help. You read stories to the kids in the family room and do all the voices. You make them laugh." Elias felt his skin prickle. This woman had been watching him, closely. "You need to tell me what's going on," he said firmly, but kept his voice gentle. "Right now." She swayed slightly, and instinct took over. He reached out to steady her elbow. Up close, he could see more details that made his chest tighten. Her skin had that brittle, papery quality. This wasn't just exhaustion. This was someone fighting death. "My name is Cora. Cora Winters." She looked down at the baby, adjusting the blanket with trembling fingers. "And this is Clara. I named her Clara because it means bright and clear, and I wanted her to have a name that meant hope, that meant light, because right now that's all I have left to give her."
Elias guided her back to the bench, sitting beside her. The bus would come soon, but something told him this moment mattered more than getting home on time. "Cora, why are you asking me this? Why me?" She took a shuddering breath, staring at the bundle in her arms. Clara made a soft mewing sound, and Cora's face crumpled. "Because I've been watching you for 3 months, she admitted. "I know that sounds creepy, stalkerish, but please, just listen. I've been staying at the shelter on and off. That's where I first saw you. You were in the family room reading Where the Wild Things Are to a group of kids. You did the monster voices, made them roar with you. They were laughing so hard." Elias remembered that night. It had been in early September. "Your phone rang. It was Ivy. She was upset you weren't home yet. I heard you tell her you loved her, that you'd be home soon to tuck her in, but right now you were helping other kids who needed bedtime stories too. And the way you said it—" She wiped her eyes with the back of her hand. There was no annoyance, no frustration, just patience and love. Then you went right back to reading, making those silly voices, giving those kids something to smile about. Elias stayed quiet, letting her continue. I started asking about you. The other volunteers told me your story, how you'd lost your wife in a car accident, how you'd been drowning in grief but never let Ivy see it, how you started volunteering because you wanted to teach her that helping others mattered, even when your own heart was broken. Cora's voice dropped to barely a whisper. You proved good people still existed, and I needed to know that, because everything in my life has taught me the opposite.
"What happened to you, Cora?" Elias asked softly. She laughed, but it was hollow and bitter. "You want the whole story? Fine. Maybe then you'll understand why I'm sitting here at a bus stop begging a stranger to take my baby." Clara stirred and Cora rocked her gently, mechanically, like she'd done it 1,000 times already in 2 short weeks. "I grew up in foster care," she began. "Bounced around from the time I was 4 until I aged out at 18. Some homes were okay, most weren't. I learned earlier that the only person you could count on was yourself." She paused. "I worked 2 jobs to put myself through community college. Studied to become a medical assistant. It wasn't much, but it was mine, my degree, my achievement, my future." Elias nodded, encouraging her to continue. "At 23, I met Trevor at the clinic where I worked. He was a pharmaceutical rep. Charming, successful, drove a nice car, wore expensive suits. He pursued me hard, said he'd never met anyone like me, someone so determined, so strong." Her jaw clenched. "I was an idiot." I believed him. "You weren't an idiot," Elias said quietly. "You were hopeful." Cora glanced at him, surprised, then looked away. "He moved me into his apartment after 6 months, said I should quit my job, that he'd take care of me. I thought it meant he loved me, that I'd finally found someone who wanted me. For 2 years I believed we were building a future together." Her hands tightened around Clara. "Then I found the messages on his phone. Dating apps, multiple women. He'd been seeing other people the entire time we were together. When I confronted him, he laughed. Actually laughed." Elias felt anger rising in his chest. "He said I was convenient," Cora continued, her voice flat now, emotionless. "An orphan with no family, no one to ask questions. Perfect for when he needed someone to cook dinner or accompany him to work events. But marriage? A real future? He said he needed someone from his social level, someone with a family, connections, a proper background." "He's a monster," Elias said bluntly. "He's a realist. At least that's what he called himself when he threw me out. I left with 1 suitcase and $200. I was too proud to go straight to a shelter, so I slept in 24-hour laundromats, hospital waiting rooms, anywhere with heat and fluorescent lights." She shifted Clara to her other arm, wincing slightly. 2 months later, I got a temporary cleaning job at an office building, night shifts. That's when I started feeling wrong. Tired all the time, but I figured it was stress, bad nutrition, sleeping on floors. Then came the headaches. Blinding, debilitating headaches that made me vomit. Vision problems, seeing double, losing peripheral sight. Elias's stomach dropped. He knew where this was going. The free clinic sent me to the emergency room. They did a CT scan. Stage 2 brain cancer, glioblastoma, aggressive, treatable with immediate intervention, chemotherapy, possibly surgery, radiation, but highly dangerous to treat while pregnant. "You were already pregnant," Elias said, understanding dawning. 4 months along. I hadn't even known. My periods had always been irregular, and with the stress, she trailed off. The doctors were very clear. Continuing the pregnancy while battling cancer was extremely dangerous. The hormonal changes could accelerate tumor growth. The physical stress could kill me. They strongly recommended termination. Elias looked at Clara's tiny face, peaceful in sleep. "But I couldn't," Cora whispered. "For 25 years, I've had nobody. No family, no one who shared my blood, no one who was truly mine. This baby," she choked on the words, "this baby was the only family I would ever have. The only person in the world who would ever be completely, truly mine. How could I—" "So you refused treatment," Elias finished. Cora nodded. "They thought I was insane. Maybe I was. The headaches got worse. I lost weight everywhere except my belly. My hair started falling out in clumps. The cancer, not chemo yet. Eventually, I just shaved it all off. The shelter became my regular refuge when I couldn't afford even the cheapest motel room. That's where you saw me, Elias said. That's where I started timing my visits for when you'd be there, Cora admitted, just to watch someone good, someone kind, someone who proved that decent people existed. I was 8 months pregnant, sick as hell, and you were the only thing I had to remind me that maybe, just maybe, Clara would be born into a world that wasn't entirely cruel. Clara began to fuss, making small hungry sounds. Cora fumbled with her coat, trying to adjust Clara to nurse, but her hands were shaking too badly. Here, Elias said gently, helping adjust Clara without thinking. His hands remembered from when Ivy was small. Cora latched the baby, tears still streaming silently down her face. I made it to 37 weeks. The doctors called it a miraculous. Clara was born small but healthy, 5 pounds, 2 ounces, perfect little fingers, perfect little toes, perfect everything. Her voice broke. But I'm not perfect. The cancer spread during the pregnancy, just like they said it would. Without treatment, they give me 3 months, maybe less. With treatment, if it works, maybe years. So start treatment. Tomorrow. Today. Right now. With what? Cora's laugh was sharp and painful. I have no insurance, no money, no home. The hospital social workers are already pushing for Clara to go into foster care while I'm in treatment. They say it's the only option. But I know that system, Elias. I lived it. I know what happens to babies with sick mothers who might not survive. She'll be adopted away, or worse, stuck in limbo for years while I fight. Either way, I lose her.
She looked at him directly now, her brown eyes desperate and pleading. So I watched you. For 3 months, I watched you be kind, be patient, be exactly the kind of father every child deserves. And I thought, maybe, there's a chance. Her voice dropped to barely audible. I'm not asking you to adopt her. I'm not asking forever. I'm just asking, take her while I get treatment. Foster her, keep her safe, let her be loved, and if I don't make it, she couldn't finish. Elias sat in stunned silence. The bus had come and gone, its taillights disappearing into the night. Around them, Chicago hummed with distant traffic, sirens, the ambient noise of a city that never quite slept. This was insane. He had Ivy to think about, his job, his own life that had finally started feeling manageable again after 3 years of grief. But he looked at Cora, 25 years old, alone, dying, fighting for the chance to be a mother. He looked at Clara, innocent and perfect, nursing peacefully despite the chaos. He thought about the moment 3 years ago when the police had knocked on his door to tell him that Caroline was gone. Thought about the neighbors who'd appeared with casseroles, the co-workers who'd covered his shifts, the strangers from church who'd watched Ivy when he couldn't function, the hands that had held him up when he couldn't stand alone. My neighbor, Mrs. Feldman, is going to think I've completely lost my mind, he said quietly. Cora's head snapped up, eyes wide with disbelief. But I was raised to believe that sometimes life puts you exactly where you need to be, exactly when someone needs you most. He pulled out his phone. I'm calling a cab. You and Clara are coming home with me tonight. Tomorrow we figure out treatment. Tomorrow we figure out the legal stuff. Tomorrow we make a plan. But tonight, you're not alone anymore.
I can't ask you to, Cora started. You're not asking. I'm offering. Elias looked at her seriously. You need to start treatment immediately, right? Clara needs care while you're getting better. I have a spare room. Ivy's been begging for a sibling since she learned to talk. And he paused, thinking of Caroline, how she'd always insisted on helping strangers, always saying everyone was one bad break from needing help. And I know what it's like to face the impossible alone. You shouldn't have to. Cora's face crumpled completely. Why? Why would you do this for strangers? Elias thought about the right words, then settled on the truth. Because 3 years ago, strangers became my family when I needed them most. Maybe it's my turn to be that person for someone else. The cab ride home was quiet, except for Clara's occasional sounds. Cora sat rigid in the back seat, holding her daughter like she might disappear, still not quite believing this was happening. When they pulled up to Elias's modest brick house in Bridgeport, lights were still on in the living room window. Mrs. Feldman appeared at the door before they even reached the porch, Her elderly face creased with concern. "Elias, it's nearly midnight. I was about to—" She stopped, staring at Cora and the baby. "They need help," Mrs. Feldman interrupted, her sharp eyes taking in Cora's appearance, the bald head, the exhaustion, the newborn. "Cancer." Cora nodded, surprised. "My sister fought it. Beat it too." Mrs. Feldman stepped aside. Come in. You look ready to collapse, dear. Elias, put them in the spare room. I'll make tea." That was the moment Cora started to believe this might actually be real.
The spare room hadn't been used since Caroline died. Elias had kept it as a guest room, but guests had been rare. He quickly changed sheets while Mrs. Feldman fussed over Cora downstairs, and Ivy, woken by the commotion, appeared at the top of the stairs in her pajamas.
"Daddy, why is there a baby?"
Her 7-year-old eyes were wide with curiosity, not fear. "Ivy, sweetie, this is Cora and her daughter Clara. They're going to stay with us for a while. Cora's sick and needs help." Ivy descended the stairs slowly, peering at Clara with intense interest. "She's really small. Can I hold her?" "Maybe tomorrow, Pug. Right now they both need rest." "Okay. Is she going to be my sister?" The innocent question made Cora's breath catch. "She's going to be our guest," Elias said carefully. "We're going to help take care of her while Cora gets better." Ivy considered this seriously. "Like when Mrs. Amy brought us soup when I had the flu?" "Exactly like that." "Okay." Ivy nodded, satisfied with this logic. She looked at Clara. "I'm really good at being quiet when people are sick, and I can read stories if the baby gets sad. I know lots of stories." Cora's tears started again. This child, this pure, kind little girl, was offering help without hesitation. "Thank you, Ivy," she managed to whisper. That first night, Elias lay awake in his own room, staring at the ceiling, wondering what he'd just done. In the room next door, Cora probably wasn't sleeping either, holding Clara, processing the fact that a stranger had just upended his entire life for her. Have you ever made a decision that terrified you but felt absolutely right? That's where Elias was. That's where they both were. Two broken people brought together by desperation and kindness, about to begin a journey neither of them could possibly imagine. The next morning, Elias called his boss and took emergency family leave. By 10 a.m., they were at Northwestern Memorial Hospital with Clara in a borrowed car seat from Mrs. Feldman, and Ivy staying home from school to help. The oncology team was shocked Cora had survived the pregnancy, but moved with impressive efficiency once they understood the situation. Treatment would begin immediately. Aggressive chemotherapy, 6 to 8 months, followed by radiation, if needed. Dr. Patel, the lead oncologist, was blunt. The pregnancy allowed the cancer to progress more than we'd like. The next few months will be extremely difficult. You'll need constant support, someone to drive you to appointments, help with daily tasks, manage medications. Do you have family? Cora glanced at Elias. "I do now." The first chemotherapy session was scheduled for the following Monday. Elias drove Cora to the cancer center at dawn, Clara strapped safely in her car seat, Ivy at school. The infusion room was cold and sterile, filled with reclining chairs and IV poles, each one occupied by someone fighting their own private war. Cora was terrified. 6 hours for the first infusion, the nurse explained. A kind woman named Diane, with kind eyes and steady hands. "You'll need someone to drive you home afterward. The side effects can hit hard." "I'll be here," Elias said, without hesitation, settling into the chair beside Cora's recliner, with Clara in his arms and his laptop balanced on his knees. "I'm working remotely today." The chemicals dripped slowly into Cora's port, a cocktail designed to kill rapidly dividing cells. Cancer cells, but also hair cells, stomach lining, immune cells. For the first 2 hours, she seemed okay. She even managed to eat some crackers, holding Clara, trying to nurse her one last time before the nausea hit. Then it hit. Cora barely made it to the bathroom. Elias held Clara, rocking her gently while Cora was violently sick in the next room. When she emerged, pale, shaking, humiliated, he handed her a cold washcloth without comment. "I'm sorry," she kept saying. "This is disgusting. I'm so sorry." "Stop apologizing," Elias said firmly. "You're fighting for your life, for Clara's future. There's nothing to be sorry for."
The drive home was torture. Every bump in the road made Cora nauseous. She kept her eyes closed, breathing through her mouth, one hand pressed against the window for the cool glass. At home, Mrs. Feldman had made bland soup. Cora took 2 sips and was sick again. That set the pattern for the next 3 days. Violent nausea, inability to keep down even water, crushing fatigue that made lifting her head feel impossible. Elias learned quickly. He learned which medications helped, some, which made things worse, many, how to recognize when Cora needed the bathroom urgently, how to prepare bottles for Clara when Cora was too weak to nurse, how to swaddle, how to soothe a crying newborn while simultaneously caring for a desperately ill woman and keeping Ivy's life as normal as possible. The second week brought brief relief. Cora could sit up, could eat small amounts of bland food, could hold Clara for longer than a few minutes. Ivy drew pictures for her, colorful scenes of flowers and sunshine, always with a small note, "Get well soon." The second round of chemotherapy brought new horrors. Cora developed peripheral neuropathy, tingling and numbness in her hands and feet that made holding Clara nearly impossible. Her fingers wouldn't grip properly. She dropped a bottle once, sending formula everywhere, and broke down completely. "I can't even hold my own daughter," she sobbed while Elias cleaned up. "What kind of mother can't hold her baby?" "The kind who's being poisoned to stay alive," Elias said gently, taking Clara and settling her in Cora's arms, supporting the baby's weight himself. "The kind who's fighting. That's the kind of mother you are."
If you've ever watched someone you care about suffer, truly suffer, you know that helpless feeling. That desperate wish to take the pain yourself, to shoulder the burden, to make it stop. Elias felt that every single day. But he also saw Cora's strength. The way she forced down food even when everything tasted like metal. The way she smiled at Clara even through tears. The way she asked about Ivy's day at school even when her own day had been consumed by nausea and pain. The weeks blurred together. Monday chemo days meant Elias worked from his laptop in the infusion room while Cora dozed between bouts of sickness. Tuesdays through Thursdays were the worst. Cora barely conscious, Elias juggling Clara's needs, Ivy's homework, conference calls with his muted microphone, and medication schedules that required constant vigilance. By Friday, Cora could usually sit up, eat soup, hold conversations. Those were the good days. They treasured them. Then came month 3. And everything went wrong. Cora's white blood cell count plummeted. Neutropenic, the doctors called it. Any infection could be fatal. She was hospitalized immediately, placed in isolation while her immune system tried to recover. Elias juggled everything, visiting hours at the hospital, caring for both girls at home, work calls, meals, laundry, a life that had become an exhausting marathon with no finish line in sight. Ivy made a banner. "Get well soon, Aunt Cora." The name had stuck naturally. Clara, now 3 months old, seemed to look for her mother, fussing more than usual when Cora wasn't there. One particularly bad night in the hospital, Cora looked up at Elias through the forest of IV lines and monitors. "I can't do this to you anymore," she whispered. "This isn't fair. You should put Clara in foster care. Let me fight this alone." "Stop," Elias interrupted firmly. "We're a team now, all 4 of us. Ivy asked me yesterday if you were going to be okay, and you know what I told her?" Cora shook her head weakly. "I told her that families don't give up on each other. And somewhere along the way, that's what we became. A family." He took her hand carefully, mindful of the IVs. "So no. You don't get to push us away now. We're in this, all of us, together."
Cora's tears soaked the hospital pillow, but for the first time, they weren't entirely tears of despair. The 4th month brought a turning point, the first scan since treatment began. Elias drove Cora to the appointment, both of them barely breathing as Dr. Patel pulled up the images. "The tumor has shrunk by 30%, he announced, a rare smile crossing his professional face. Cora sobbed. Elias held her while Clara cooed happily in her carrier, and Ivy, who'd insisted on coming, cheered loud enough that nurses poked their heads in to see what was happening. "It's working," Dr. Patel said. "The treatment is working." For the first time since that night at the bus stop, hope felt real. But the fight wasn't over, not even close. Cora developed mouth sores during month 5, painful ulcers that made eating agony. She lost more weight despite everyone's best efforts. Elias started making protein smoothies, the only thing she could tolerate, flavoring them with bits of fruit and honey. "You're going to turn me into a health nut," Cora joked weakly, wincing as she swallowed. "If it keeps you alive, I'll turn you into whatever you need to be." Somewhere during those endless days and nights, something shifted between them. It was subtle at first, the way Elias's hand would linger on Cora's shoulder when he helped her to the bathroom, the way Cora's eyes would track him across the room, the way they'd both reach for Clara simultaneously and their hands would brush. Neither acknowledged it. How could they? Cora was fighting for her life. Elias was playing caretaker. This wasn't the time for complicated feelings. But feelings don't wait for convenient times. Month 6 brought another scan, 50% reduction. The tumor was shrinking significantly. Cora was winning. 2 more months of chemotherapy, then 6 weeks of radiation. "You were doing remarkably well, Cora."
Those final 2 months tested everyone's endurance. Cora's body was exhausted from the constant chemical assault. Her veins were shot from repeated IVs. She developed a persistent cough that wouldn't quit, but she persisted, motivated by every small milestone. Clara's first laugh, Ivy's dance recital, the way Elias looked at her when he thought she wasn't watching. The final chemotherapy session fell on a Thursday in August, 8 months after that desperate night at the bus stop. Cora rang the bell, a tradition for patients completing treatment. The entire infusion room applauded. Diane, the nurse who'd been with her from the beginning, had tears in her eyes. Ivy had made another crown from construction paper, champion spelled out in glitter letters. Clara, now 8 months old and crawling everywhere, clapped her chubby hands without understanding why. Elias just smiled, tired, proud, relieved. Radiation came next. Daily treatments for 6 weeks, less brutal than chemotherapy, but exhausting in its repetition. Every single day, Monday through Friday, they made the drive to Northwestern. Elias rearranged his entire work schedule, dropping Cora off each morning, taking Ivy to school with Clara in tow, then picking Cora up before the afternoon school run. The routine became meditative in its own way. They'd listen to music in the car, Cora's hair growing back now soft and dark and curly, which she called chemo curl. By September, it was 2 inches long. By October, long enough that Ivy could clip small barrettes into it. Clara's first birthday fell on a cold November day, exactly 1 year after that night at the bus stop. They celebrated with a small party, just the 4 of them and Mrs. Feldman. A grocery store cake with pink frosting. Clara smearing it everywhere, delighted by the mess. Ivy helping her baby's sister open presents. Cora sat beside Elias on the couch, watching the girls play, and felt something she hadn't felt in years. Contentment, safety, home. "Thank you," she whispered, not for the first time. "Stop thanking me," Elias replied, not for the first time. "I'm serious. None of this, Clara, me, being alive, none of it would have happened without you." Elias turned to look at her. Her hair had grown back now fully, dark curls framing her face. She'd gained back some weight. Color had returned to her cheeks. She looked nothing like the dying woman from the bus stop. She looked beautiful. "We did it together," he said quietly. "All of us." The final scan came in early December, 1 year and 1 week after everything began. Elias held Cora's hand in Dr. Patel's office, while Clara played with blocks on the floor and Ivy fidgeted nervously in her chair. Dr. Patel pulled up the images. "No evidence of disease," he announced. "Complete response, Cora. The cancer is gone." The office erupted. Ivy shrieked with joy, Clara startled and started crying, then laughing when everyone else laughed. Cora collapsed against Elias, sobbing so hard her whole body shook. "You did it," Elias whispered into her curls. "You survived." "We survived," Cora corrected through her tears. "All of us. We survived." In the parking lot afterwards, snow began falling. Soft, clean, beautiful. Clara tried to catch snowflakes in her chubby hands. Ivy danced in circles, singing about Aunt Cora being all better now. That evening, after both girls were asleep, Cora found Elias in the kitchen making tea. She'd been trying to figure out how to bring this up, the conversation about her moving out, getting her own place, not being a burden anymore. "Elias, I need to talk to you," she started, her heart pounding. "Actually, I need to talk to you too. I've been trying to figure out how to say this for weeks." "Let me go first," Cora insisted. I should start looking for my own place. You've done so much, more than anyone could ever ask, but you've got your life back now, and I don't want you to move out." Cora stopped mid-sentence. "What?" Elias set down his mug, his hands shaking slightly. "I don't want you to move out. Actually, I was hoping you'd stay. Not as a patient or a house guest, but as more." The kitchen felt too small suddenly, the air charged with something unspoken that was finally being said. "More," Cora repeated carefully. "These past 12 months, watching you fight, seeing you with the girls, having family dinners together, just being together." Elias took a breath. "Somewhere along the way, I fell in love with you." Cora's heart stopped, started, raced. "You can't," she whispered. "Elias, you saved our lives. You're just feeling obligated." "Obligated?" He actually laughed. "Cora, you brought light back into this house. You showed Ivy that strength isn't about never falling. It's about getting back up. You showed me that my heart wasn't buried with Caroline. It was just waiting for someone who needed me as much as I needed her. Needed you." Tears streamed down Cora's face. "I don't know how to be in a family. I don't know how to be loved." "Then let me teach you," Elias said softly, stepping closer. "Let me show you what it looks like when someone chooses you, not out of convenience or obligation, but because you're extraordinary, because watching you survive made me want to live again, fully, completely. Because Clara and Ivy already act like sisters, and maybe we should stop pretending this is temporary." "You really mean this?" Cora said, not quite a question. "I really mean this." She kissed him then, soft and tentative, and tasting like tears and hope and new beginnings. 2 years later, on a sunny September afternoon, Elias and Cora married in their backyard. Ivy, now 10 years old, served as maid of honor, taking her role incredibly seriously. 3-year-old Clara toddled down the makeshift aisle, throwing flower petals with enthusiastic inaccuracy that made everyone laugh. Cora's hair had grown long, reaching past her shoulders in those soft curls. She wore a simple white dress. Elias wore a suit he'd bought specifically for this day. Mrs. Feldman cried through the entire ceremony. The cancer remained in remission. Cora had enrolled in nursing school, inspired by the care she'd received, wanting to help other cancer patients navigate treatment. Elias had been promoted at work. Ivy excelled in school. Clara was healthy, happy, and completely unaware of the desperate circumstances of her first few weeks of life. At the reception, as Elias watched Cora dancing with both girls, their laughter mixing with music and sunshine, he thought about that cold December night at the bus stop, how a desperate plea from a dying stranger had become the foundation for something neither of them saw coming.
Love doesn't always arrive the way we expect. Sometimes it shows up terrified and bald, holding a newborn baby, asking the impossible from a stranger. Sometimes it grows slowly, in the spaces between chemotherapy sessions and midnight bottle feedings and hospital vigils. Sometimes it blooms in the aftermath of survival, when two broken people realize they've somehow become whole together. The bus stop on Ashland Avenue still stood, weathered and ordinary. They'd installed a small plaque on the bench,
something most people wouldn't notice or understand. Hope begins here. Because it did. Hope began the moment one desperate mother trusted a stranger with her most precious possession. Hope grew through every brutal treatment session, every sleepless night, every small victory won against impossible odds. Hope flourished when they all chose love over fear, family over solitude, faith over certainty. Their story became legend at the cancer center and the shelter, proof that miracles still happened, that good people still existed, that sometimes the very thing that seems impossible becomes the thing that saves you. Cora kept a journal for Clara, filling page after page with the story of her first year. Someday, when Clara was old enough to understand, she'd read about the bus stop, about Elias's impossible kindness, about fighting for life, and love winning in the end. She'd learned that family isn't always about blood. Sometimes it's about choice, about showing up, about saying yes when every logical reason says no, about loving so fiercely that impossible becomes possible. That's what Elias taught them all. And that's what they became, a family forged not from perfection, but from desperation transformed into love, from strangers transformed into everything. If this story touched you, share it with someone who needs to remember that kindness still exists, that second chances are real, that sometimes the people who save us are the ones we least expect. Because we all stand at bus stops in our lives, desperate, terrified, holding on to hope by the thinnest thread. And sometimes, if we're incredibly lucky, a stranger stops and changes everything. That's not just a story. That's the kind of world worth fighting for. Friends, if this story touched your heart the way it touched mine, if it reminded you of the power we all have to change someone's life with a simple act of kindness, please don't just watch and walk away. Hit that subscribe button and join our Everbells Stories family.